Hey everyone, we're Red Donkey Projections. My name is Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is October 18th, 2020, and today we will be filling out our Senate predictions. There are quite a few states that are becoming pretty contested that do determine who has the majority.
Indeed. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's start off with our safe Democratic states. Oregon is a safe seat, as is Ben Lujan in New Mexico. In New Hampshire, Gene Shaheen will probably win this one in a safe margin because the Republicans failed to put up a good candidate. Massachusetts, we now know that it will be Ed Markey. Rhode Island, Cory Booker in New Jersey, and the Delaware Senate seat, as well as Mark Warner in Virginia, who is one of the more moderate Democrats in the Senate. And this is also along with Dick Durbin in Illinois, who is the minority whip of the Senate. Heading now to the safe Republican states, we have Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas. Oh, actually, we'll discuss Kansas later. Oklahoma. These are the usual suspects for our safe Democratic states here.
Republican.
Sorry, safe Republican states. Thank you.
For the most part.
Yep. And I think that is it for the safe Republican states. Let's dig down into the likely Republican states. We have first Kansas. Eric, why don't you quickly discuss this?
Yep. So we have Roger Marshall for the Republican Party, and then we have Barbara Boyer for the Democratic Party. And during the primaries, we were thinking that it was going to be close between Chris Kobach, who was tied up in a few allegations, and Roger Marshall, who was a bit less of a controversial candidate. So Roger Marshall won the primary, and he faces off with Barbara Boyer, which isn't really good for her because now she doesn't have that much of a chance. But we have seen some interesting numbers in the polls. I don't know if they've updated as of their last result, but according to the polls, which Lucas will pull up, Barbara Boyer is up by 4, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
And the one before Marshall was up by 4, and then it was even at one point. So, I'm actually debating whether this is a likely race or a lean race because poll, it is.
I think it'll probably be slightly above 5 points, maybe 6, 7 points.
Yeah, maybe. But long story short, this race is a lot contested than one might think. And I guess Barbara Boyer she's still putting up a fight against Roger Marshall. We'll really have to see where this race goes coming closer to the election, which we're only 16 days away from, according as of today.
Right. I think that Chris Kobach was incredibly unpopular. Republicans got really lucky here that Barbara Boyer is facing off against Roger Marshall. People consider Barbara Boyer to be this fundraising powerhouse, raising lots and lots of money for her campaign. So we're putting that one as likely for now. Kentucky is another likely state. I think that it'll be barely likely, maybe about 14 points, somewhere around there, 14, 15 points. There was a debate. I watched some of it. Amy McGrath has also been considered by many to be a fundraising powerhouse, raising a ton of money for her campaign. But quite frankly, this is Kentucky. It's going to be solid red. The race is going to be likely red, but the state partisanship in general is a very, very solid red state. Even though Mitch McConnell is extremely unpopular, the second most unpopular senator in the United States currently, we're going to put this one as likely. Simply due to the fact that Kentucky is really, really ruby red already. Heading now to Mississippi and Alabama. Mississippi is going to be a rematch of the other Senate race they had. I believe it was a special. It's between Cindy Clyde Smith and Mike Espy. Mike Espy actually came, I don't want to say close, but he came a lot closer than people might have thought in the Senate race a few years back. With this rematch, I could see it going below 15 points, the margin. That's definitely possible. So we'll put this one as likely. Alabama, this is currently held by Democrat Doug Jones, who won an upset election in 2017 against Roy Moore. Roy Moore was a terrible candidate. He had several controversies, allegations, all of it, very unpopular figure. He still lost by just 2 points. That shows how conservative Alabama is. And Tommy Tuberville, sadly for Doug Jones, doesn't have all those allegations at him. All the polling and all the data has been pointing to a pretty large Tuberville victory.
Yep, and also Donald Trump has endorsed the Republican candidate Tommy Tuberville here in Alabama. And despite the funding that is coming in for Doug Jones, he just doesn't seem to be putting up well against Tommy Tuberville. He's a fairly uncontroversial candidate that Alabama just wants to elect because of its conservative base.
I agree. All right, heading out to Alaska. Alaska, we also got some interesting data in that it might be closer than we were once thinking. We were putting this one as a safe red before, but as we got more and more data, it looks like it's going to be closer than 15 points. Sienna Upshot shows Sullivan only up by 8 points, but there is a pretty high undecided number, and in Alaska, a lot of the undecideds do split for the Republican candidate. October 15th, we actually saw one with Gross leading. Gross is actually independent, but he's probably going to caucus with the Democrats. Mm-hmm. So in general, taking a look at this, we think that it will be less than 15 points. And Alaska is, as I said in yesterday's video, it's a lot less solid Republican than most of the other Republican states on here.
And also, interestingly, in that most recent poll, the third party candidate had 10% of the vote, and it would be interesting to see how that swings the race in the election, if it does.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, now that Alaska is finished, let's head now to is that it for our likelies? No, we missed one.
We have Texas.
Yep, Texas, Cornyn. Yep, Eric, how about you discuss Cornyn?
Sure. So John Cornyn is actually an incumbent right now in the Texas Senate race. And the thing is, we don't have a Beto O'Rourke, as we've said before, we don't have a Beto O'Rourke candidate that's trying to, run against a Republican incumbent. Hagar is, once again, not very controversial, but she's not gaining enough momentum to really overcome the John Cornyn. As we see in the polls, Cornyn does hold a relatively, well, except this most recent one, he holds a relatively consistent, pretty high lead in the state of Texas. We have a few outliers like Cornyn +1, and our most recent poll is actually Cornyn +3. But we don't think that Hagar could take over this race.
I agree. We're putting this one as likely for now. And just to mention our margins here, because we haven't mentioned them in a while, a likely is between 5 and 15 points margin of victory. A tilt is less than 1% victory. Lean is between a 1 and 5% margin of victory, and solid is a 15+ point victory. That I did that really out of order, but please excuse me for that. Heading now to our likely Democratic states, Minnesota, Tina Smith here, a lot less well known than Amy Klobuchar is. However, Minnesota does look like it will go to the Democrats, both Joe Biden and Tina Smith, in a pretty good margin. Polling data does suggest that it's going to be less than 15 points, so we are moving it from safe to likely from what we had before. Recent polls, 7, 8, 10, 15, 7. Yeah. At the end of the day,
very consistent results, and Tina Smith, very small chance that she will lose this in an upset.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that is actually it for I missed quite a few likelies. First of all, Colorado. John Hickenlooper versus Cory Gardner. Colorado has moved significantly to the left in recent years. And taking into account that we have a pretty unpopular Republican senator right now, Cory Gardner, who is a staunch Trump supporter in a very deep blue, well, not very deep blue, but it's a pretty deep blue Democratic state, that's not going to look good for him. And even worse is his opponent is John Hickenlooper, who was the former governor of Colorado. He was very, very popular as well. He ran for president. He has a lot of name recognition. And that's going to be really good for him in the state. And we think that this will be a flip to John Hickenlooper by a likely margin. And I think it's a pretty decent win here. Out of the states here, this is probably the most likely Senate state to flip to the Democrats. The second state we have moved from lean to likely now. This is Amy McGrath, Martha McSally, and Mark Kelly. So this one's an interesting one in that Martha McSally is just such a terrible candidate. And I'm saying that as objective, in an objective way. After she ran for Senate in 2018 and she lost, after the death of John McCain and after John Kyle resigned, Governor Ducey appointed Martha McSally, who lost this election 2 years ago, and he appointed her. Now you can see why people are not going to be really happy about that, because they already didn't vote for her the first time. Why should they vote for her again? And more, and to add further fuel to the fire, you have Mark Kelly, who is pretty well known. If he's an astronaut, if you didn't know, I know like a lot of children know who he is. He is the husband of Gabby Giffords, who was a representative from Arizona, and I think that name recognition will boost him to defeat Martha McSally, especially considering her unpopularity. And that's not to further add the polling data suggestions as well. Polling data has suggested like a pretty big victory as well. Trafalgar has it at 2, but that's, Trafalgar is not the best source. But every other polling source, it seems that it's showing Kelly winning within a likely margin. And we are going to put this one as likely.
Yes. And also one more thing. I think Martha McSally and Mark Kelly actually had a debate recently within the past week or two, and that definitely did not help Martha McSally. That debate was definitely not any sort of game changer for her. And in fact, it kind of just reinforced the fact that one of them is very unfavorable. Her performance was not satisfactory in order to win back this race, which once again adds more fuel to the fire, really.
And right, Arizona's also moving more to the left, so it is interesting to see that we are putting this one as likely from now on. All right. Lean states now. Did I get all the likelies? I think I did get all the likelies. We had some, changes here. But let's start with the first lean, which is South Carolina. Oops, not blue. Lean red. South Carolina, Lindsey Graham here. And this race has become a lot more competitive than we first thought. When we first started our channel, this was a safe immediately. South Carolina, safe. We are not seeing that with Lindsey Graham, quite frankly. Lindsey Graham knows that he's in a competitive race. And I was watching the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, and he's made it clear several times. He mentioned Obamacare, how it's so bad to South Carolinians. And I read an interesting article talking about how this does show that he knows that his race is competitive. He's a little bit scared that he's going to lose. Jamie Harrison is a fundraising powerhouse, just like Amy McGrath and and what is the other person? Wow, I'm forgetting. Oh, sorry, Barbara Boyer. And he's raised a lot of money for his campaign. Additionally, people are not happy with Lindsey Graham during his tenure. And let me actually pull up the polling right now. It is showing a closer race than we once thought. Lindsey Graham 6 points up, Harrison up 1 point, Graham up 6, Harrison up 1 even. So we definitely think it's going to be less than that 5-point margin. Especially with these polls. The only 2 polls that we're seeing with more than a likely margin, a lean margin, and even then it's just a 6-point lead. So that's only 1 point higher than our lean characterization. There's only 2 polls that show that. So we're going to put this one as a lean. Alrighty, let's head now to Michigan. Eric, how about you discuss Michigan?
Yeah, so we actually think this is going to go in a lean because very recently the race has kind of contested like a lot, and it made the news that John James, yes, Trafalgar is polling James +1, but it has slimmed up just a little in the recent weeks. And we still do think Gary Peters is going to win this race, but it has kind of slimmed up to a bit less of a 5-point margin, maybe somewhere around a 5-point margin in Michigan.
I agree. I'm thinking like 4 to 5 points. I don't think that Gary Peters will lose. I think that he'll win, but just by a smaller margin for sure. All right. Let's head now to Georgia's elections. We'll start off with, I don't know, which one should we start off with? Let's start with a special.
Sure, because that has been
sorry.
That has been showing some interesting results.
Yeah, for sure. The Democrats could have put forth better candidates, I'll be honest. Stacey Abrams should have definitely ran for Senate, but I guess she wanted vice president. They instead put up Raphael Warnock, who I believe is I think he's a pastor. I'm not completely sure, but they're putting up Raphael Warnock, and there are 2 Republican candidates running actually. And those 2 candidates are Kelly Loeffler, who is the current senator, and also Doug Collins, who's a representative. And essentially, if you don't know how the special election will work, it's essentially a jungle election. There's no primary, which means that everyone runs regardless of your party, and people vote for someone to win. If a candidate gets over 50%, they win the election, they become the senator. However, if no candidate reaches over 50%, the top two contenders face in a runoff election. And you can kind of see why this might cause an issue for the Republicans. You have two pretty well-known Republicans running, Representative Doug Collins and also Senator Kelly Loeffler. And I was reading an article about this as well, how this could cause Warnock to come in, and it might not necessarily allow him to win, but it could possibly allow him to get into that runoff if no one reaches that 50% threshold. And the article also mentioned how Loeffler and Collins keep competing, like trying to make themselves looking more and more right to the right of each other to kind of win that base in Georgia. And as Eric mentioned, the polling data has been, for lack of a better word, interesting to see. You have Warnock at 30, Loeffler at 28, Collins at 20. Lieberman, fun fact, he's actually the son, I believe, of former Senator Joe Lieberman from Connecticut. He actually was a vice presidential nominee in 2000. That was really off topic, but still, interesting fact there. 8-3, Warnock up 4. And we've been seeing that consistently with some of these polls. Again, Quinnipiac is not the best pollster, but it is interesting to see that they have Warnock at 12, Warnock at 8. But again, you got to remember that this is a jungle, so he's not necessarily facing off against one Republican candidate. But it's been really interesting to see that this race might be indeed closer than we first thought. And for these reasons, we are going to put this race as a lean. This one we'll keep a very sharp eye on because we could see this change pretty quickly. Yep. All right. Eric, why don't you do the regular election now between Jon Ossoff and David Perdue?
Yep. I was also thinking of doing that. So Georgia's regular race is kind of similarly following suit to Georgia special. It's definitely not safe. And if we pull up the polls, it's pretty back and forth. Perdue has recently got up into the lead with an A pollster showing how he's leading by 3, but Ossoff was in the lead, like, I don't know, that same day. So polls are showing interesting results with 2 different candidates up at the same time. So this is a lot more contested than one might think. And also in general, as we've said in yesterday's video, turnout in Georgia has skyrocketed since 2016. Once again, that 134% number, like, wow, that's like unheard of. So turnout is increased, which is why the margins could be very interesting in this year's election.
I completely agree with you on that. And Georgia has been moving more and more to the left, becoming more and more purple now. And we do think that David Perdue will win the seat, but just narrowly over Jon Ossoff. We think between a 1 to 5 point margin here. All right. And some other lean states now. The first one we have is North Carolina. Yes, we did see the scandal that Cal Cunningham had. It doesn't seem to have affected him. Let's look at the polls right now. Nothing seems to have changed, and if anything,
it may have narrowed up just a little more. But Cal Cunningham still has a pretty good lead here in North Carolina. And what I've noticed, an interesting pattern, is that the scandals that people are involved in, it kind of depends on what the scandal is. This isn't a foolproof statement, but if it's kind of like a non-political scandal, like, for example, Cal Cunningham was caught kind of sexting with other people, it's kind of not that political comparing to, for example, the October surprise with Hillary Clinton's emails, which is pretty political, and that's kind of that kind of skewed the election. But it's, once again, this isn't a foolproof observation, but we definitely still see Cal Cunningham in the lead.
Yeah, I don't think this really will have that much impact on the election because people don't really seem to, I guess, care that much about it. It looks like they might just vote for him because people think that he's simply better than Tillis, because Tillis is he's not too liked in the state of North Carolina, but we do think that Cunningham will probably win within a 1 to 5 margin.
Yep, makes sense.
All right. And one more lean state is the state of Maine. Sarah Gideon has been out fundraising Susan Collins. I'm going to actually pull up the numbers right now. Look at those numbers. Susan Collins has raised just $25 million. And Sarah Gideon has raised
0.7.
63 million. Wow. And Susan Collins is the incumbent. She should be the one that's, kind of outraising Sarah Gideon. Gideon is a really good candidate, and that's considering her previous experience, political experience. She is the current, I believe, the Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, which is a really good role to assume if you're running for the Senate here. Sarah Gideon's also more of a moderate candidate, and Maine loves their moderates. Senator Cohen, Senator King,
Collins, yeah.
Senator Snow. Now the problem with Collins is a lot of people in Maine. What do you call someone from Maine? Is it a Manian? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Someone from Maine. Some of the people in Maine do think that Susan Collins has become a little bit too partisan, and people think that she should be more of the middle of the road type of candidate. She voted for Brett Kavanaugh. She voted against impeachment, and that has not been sitting well with a lot of the people in Maine. We are going to put this one as a lean for Sarah Gideon. All right. That wraps up the lean states. We're going to head now to the tilt states, in which actually I should probably bring up the Democrats do have 50 right now. And if Joe Biden wins the presidency, which we are projecting right now, the Democrats have already won control of the Senate. But let's keep going with these final two states. Let's start with Montana first. Montana, I think it's going to be, this is definitely borderline between tilt R and lean R. We were going to move it to lean, but we just had to hold back just a little bit. Eric, why don't you talk about Montana?
Yeah, so we like to call this race the Double Steves. And more recently than not, Steve Daines, for the most part, has regained or began to lead in the polls, because towards the end of the summer, Steve Daines has been polling like more than Steve Bullock has, +2, +3, and gradually it's been increasing. A few downfalls, but Daines +9 from October 7th, A- poll, and then even. So it's a bit towards Steve Daines' favor. We were going to put it at lean, but look at this more recent poll, Bullock +2. It's not a complete lost cause for him. This is still a very contested race, and just 6 days ago, this was polled at even. So it could really go any way, but I think Steve Daines has the edge.
I agree. And now that I think about it, I think it might be above a 1 to 5 point. It might be above 1 point margin. So I think I am going to move this one to lean. I think it probably will go around a point or maybe 1.1. What do you think about that, Eric?
Yeah, if this pattern kind of continues, and if Steve Daines does edge out Steve Bullock by just a little, a 1 point reinforcement, or a 1 or more point lead is possible. But as we know, Montana does like to split ballots, so this is very interesting. A lot of things to take in, and we'll see how that plays out during the election.
Yeah, because again, as we mentioned before, we know a lot of people who have been getting ads about helping Steve Daines, so maybe it's working. I don't know. But yep, that is our final lean state. And our final state is Iowa, which we are going to now give to Teresa Greenfield. We're putting this one as a tilt D. I think we put this one as tilt D last time as well. Dayton, Iowa has continuously been showing Greenfield up again, up. Every single poll we've seen, with the exception of this one, it seems to be, which was actually a Monmouth A+ pollster, showing it even. But of all the other polls we have here, Greenfield is up, and I think Greenfield is a pretty good candidate to run against Ernst, who Ernst is not pretty popular, but Greenfield does have a really good shot against her right now, and that is why we are flipping this state to Teresa Greenfield. Before we did have it as, I believe, tilt R, because during the summer we saw, Monmouth putting 3-1-1, and we're like, is something up? But we are seeing again that looks like Greenfield has bounced back a bit and has taken the lead in these A-plus poll that we have been seeing recently. I wish we could get some more data out of Montana, which it's kind of stinks. It's kind of random, but also Iowa too. I wish they were polling it a little bit more, but we are putting this one as tilt. This means that Democrats do have an outright majority according to our projections of 51 seat to 49 seat majority. Now, the problem that we've been discussing with a lot before is a 51 is not a solid majority, which means that on a lot of votes, you could see the Republicans passing or blocking stuff from passing due to a lot of the more moderate senators in the Democratic Senate. For example, Joe Manchin, very moderate, as well as, someone like Angus King, who caucuses with the Democrats, but is also quite moderate. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how a 51-49 Senate will play out. And we still have 16 days until the election. It's getting really close now.
Very close.
Yeah, we'll see what actually happens and how close our predictions are. And we'll see you with another prediction for this in 2 weeks as well. So thank you all so much for watching this episode. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.